Good morning. We're going to try this for the third and final time this morning. Welcome to Generator Live. It's a Friday morning hangout. And if you are here, if you decided to come back and check it out for the third time, drop a comment. Let me know if you can hear me and if you see me, what you're doing this morning, what you're drinking, what you're working on. I know for me, it is way warmer than it usually is today in Maine. So what's happening is all the snow, all the ice is melting. It's going to be about 50 degrees. We're going to get a ton of wind. It's pouring outside. I was supposed to actually have a personal branding shoot at the studio this morning, but because of the weather and the fact that the woman that was coming to see me was driving a little bit over 2 hours, that we decided to postpone it a little bit. Client safety above all else, and I'm not going to make someone drive through a really powerful storm just to come get their pictures taken. They can wait a week. So rescheduled. That means I've got this morning to hang out with you. So you let me know if you're ready to start talking about podcasting. And what I mean by that is I don't think you're sitting here going, "Oh, I can't wait for podcasting talk." That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is on Wednesday night, I was going through all the stuff that I was doing, talking about the new podcast, the new format, what I'm doing in 2026, how I'm reshaping things, all the stuff that I'm working on. And I don't do that to be like, look how busy I am. I do it because I want to give you complete insight as to what's going on behind the scenes. So if you have any interest in starting a podcast of your own, hang out here. Tell me what you're talking about. Tell me what your questions are. I'll do my best to answer anything. So I'm just going to check a couple of things, make sure everything is up and running because I've had so many problems this morning. This is my third time starting this morning because I was getting um, audio problems and I was getting video problems. I think I have it worked out, and it's mainly because I got new fiber internet yesterday instead of Starlink. So now I've got 500 megs up, 500 megs down. It's blazing fast. I can, stream to multiple places like I'm doing now, Facebook, YouTube, all super easy. But I was making some setting changes on my computer yesterday and must have screwed something up. Seems to be back working now. So if you are here, just drop me a note, whether it's a comment in Facebook or on YouTube. Just drop that comment in and let me know what's going on in your world. All right. So the reason I wanted to talk about podcasting this morning, yes, we did some stuff on Wednesday night, but the reason I wanted to talk about it this morning is everybody talks about the gear, about how we do podcasting. I made, ironically, a video about microphones yesterday. Put that up on my channel. It was really not even meant to be a real video. I have the MV7X here from Shure. Shure and Ecamm sent me a Shure MV7 Plus, which is the same exact microphone. It's the same series of microphones, the same capsule, same electronics, but they've got not only the XLR, but they've got the USB input into it as well. So I did this really short comparison video between the two just so that you can hear that there's really no difference. That was the whole gist of it, is I wanted people to be like, "Oh, what difference do you hear?" There's no difference in the microphone. It's just an input option, whether you use XLR or whether you use USB. So it was a little bit of a trick question, but I was doing it to make it seem like I was doing this big elaborate video. I wasn't. I was holding two of almost exactly the same microphone next to each other, and they sound almost exactly the same because, I was switching between the two. They sound exactly the same. So it's easy to talk about gear. And that's the conversation that I was having with uh, this woman this week, where she wants to start a podcast and she was sent to me because she wants to talk about gear and what does she need. She's a photographer. She's got a ton of followers, wants to add podcasting into her marketing. I think it's a really smart idea. I think she's going to be very successful with it. She's been interviewed a bunch of places. She knows how an interview goes. But the craft of podcasting is such that it goes well beyond the gear. We can talk about gear because gear is safe and gear is easy. And I can tell you exactly what to buy on Amazon or B&H or Adorama or pick your poison, wherever you're spending your money. I can tell you exactly what to buy so that you sound and look professional. What I can't do is teach you the craft of speaking to someone. I can't teach you the craft and make it feel intrinsic to you. You have to do the work. I can give you the information. You have to do the work of whether or not you internalize it and can actually carry that conversation. All right, I'm going to just check and make sure that everything again is flowing right. I'm super gun shy right now about all of this because things were going so poorly this morning. But yeah, things seem to be going all right. All right, let's see. Okay, awesome. So we got some people watching. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, believe me, I'm getting into this. Just needed to make sure that everything was flowing. Cool. All right. So the craft of podcasting really is what makes an episode worth listening to. It's what makes it worth downloading because a lot of us will put podcasts on as silence, as something in the background. Hey, Seishu, thank you. I appreciate you coming back. I appreciate you sticking with it. And I appreciate you, my friend. I wouldn't have known if the audio was working otherwise. So I really thank you for calling me out. Yeah, the craft of podcasting. Ironic that the microphone wasn't working. All right. So I wanted to dive into this with what I think is the hardest skill in podcasting in general. It's not the gear, it's not the setup, it's not the tech, it's none of that. It's learning to shut up. It's learning how much more important listening is than talking. Because every second that you talk is a second that your guest isn't. And your listeners came to listen to them, not necessarily you, right? They can come back week after week and hear little bits of you and get a feel for what you're like and what your style is. But if you're the type of podcast where you have a guest, let them lead the conversation, meaning you guide them, but you guide them with questions that are going to bring things out of them that the listeners might not know or might not hear on other podcasts. There's so many podcasts that sound exactly the same because people don't do their research into how to interview someone, how to ask questions that are open-ended enough that it starts to lead that person in a different direction than just, hey, how's your photography business? It's great. Great. Now what are we going to talk about for the next 58 minutes? Right? You have to hear what someone isn't saying. So by paying attention to their cadence, paying attention to their word choice, any shifts in their vocal presentation, you have to pay attention to that. For example, if they're rushing through something, they might be excited or they might be anxious. If they're stuttering through an answer, it might be that they're just nervous or uncertain, or maybe they're teetering on the edge of being vulnerable. And this is where you have to start thinking and listening about what's being said, not just preparing for your next question. What happens a lot, and believe me, everything that I'm saying here is totally stuff that I've done and still do from time to time. But I'm getting better at it. I'm aware of it. I'm working on it. But one of the most uncomfortable things that you can have in a podcast is silence, right? We want to fill the spaces with words. We want there to be this constant flow of information. But what I found is that the silence, those little moments where everybody goes quiet and things hang in the air, that's uncomfortable, but it's powerful. Now, I was doing a little bit of notes before this podcast, so I've got a couple of things that I wrote down, and I said a study from NPR's training department found that episodes with deliberate pauses scored higher in listener retention. The space lets the audience process what's being said and keeps them emotionally synced with the guest. But if you're just editing out the silence and you're pushing and you're pushing and you're pushing, that doesn't leave room for that conversation to breathe naturally. It doesn't leave room for your guest for your guest's words to just land and sit with the audience, right? And that is what a lot of people rush through because they're more interested in waiting to talk than waiting to listen. They don't have any concept of active listening skills. And so it's more active listening, if you don't know, is really taking in what someone is saying, being present, and hearing the words, but also understanding that they can go in a lot of different directions. So instead of just sitting there and nodding and going, which seems like great active listening, what you're doing is you're just waiting for kind of like the next thing to drop. You have to clear out all of that mental clutter that you have, all the stuff that you've been thinking about. Maybe your dog got loose this morning, your kids were crying, or your boss is a real pain in the ass, or traffic was a mess, or something happened where you've got all this mental clutter in your head. And now you've got to go do an interview, and there's no room for your guest or what they're saying in your head. So you have to be able to work through that. How do I do it? Because if you're listening to me here, I just talk and I talk and I talk. When I don't have a guest, a lot of times I ramble and I go way off in one direction and then I come way back. And it's because I really don't have anything that I'm playing off of. I'm doing this extemporaneously and I don't have a ton of notes to read. That's what this whole morning is supposed to be. Friday mornings are just supposed to be hanging out, talking. So if you're here and you're listening, and you're digging what I'm saying, just drop a note in the chat. Let me talk to you a little bit. Ask me anything. We're just going to talk about the craft of podcasting. So, like I was saying, the asking those follow-up questions where you're present and it means something, those are what really set the stage for a powerful conversation. So when you get, these little threads, these little tendrils of interesting statements from your guest, you can tug on those a little bit, maybe circle back to them, maybe probe a little bit more and understand that what you're trying to do is bring out more interest in the story. You're trying to bring out more detail. Maybe you're trying to dig into what their mindset was like at the time of whatever the situation is. But when you have these targeted follow-ups, it feels more intuitive, right? Because a lot of times your listeners are thinking these questions and they're saying, please, host, ask this question. And when you gloss over it because you're so excited to get to the next topic, you miss a lot of gold. You miss a lot of the good stuff. What you wind up with when you do stay present and you're paying attention to what's being said is you get genuine attention and you're not pulling from some pre-written script that is just going to sound like a pre-written script. Again, I'm not casting shade on anybody. Everybody's got their own style. What I'm saying is that when I listen to interviews, especially people that are newer to podcasting, they just don't know this stuff. And that's okay. A lot of it comes with experience. But there are certain things that if you have these tools at the beginning, it will make your podcast journey a lot more fun. All right. So, how do we ask better questions? So, let's start with talking about some questions that are weak or lazy. Did you enjoy recording your latest album? And someone's going to say, yeah. A stronger way to ask that question is, what part of writing that album surprised you the most? The first one kind of like checks the box. Did you enjoy, making that album? But the second one opens up the chance for the guest to add in a lot more context. They can say, yeah, what really surprised me is that we were starting off in this very jazz infused way and we wound up in Norwegian death metal. And that really surprised all of us, right? I don't know where this conversation is going to go, but you have to ask better questions to get there. So, how do you write those questions? And how do you not sound like every other podcast out there? Well, a lot of it is looking for these little gaps. You have to do some research. You have to look at your guest and say, what have they talked about? Have they been on podcasts before? What have they talked about before? Is it something that I want to do the same interview as everybody else because I want to check a box and I just want to get it done and say that I had this guest on? Or do I want to try to be that memorable podcast? Like, holy shit, did you hear what they said on Generator? Like, you got to go listen to this. That's the kind of feedback that you want. So when you're writing these questions and you've got your North Star for your interview and you start to, ask questions that lead everybody towards that North Star, you have to be able to say, are there topics that keep coming up that the guest keeps dancing around that they haven't fully answered the question to? This is where you have to be a little bit of an investigative journalist too. If you say something along the lines of, when you started your business, what was your biggest fear? They may say something about, being able to support their family and making enough money so that they could support their family. Okay, well, that's great at the surface. Why? You have a big family? You have a small family? What is it about it? Are they going to college? Play a lot of sports? All right. Dig in, get a little bit personal so that you understand why supporting their families so important, right? Everybody wants to support their family and their loved ones, clearly, but maybe there's something hidden. Maybe they came from a childhood where they didn't feel supported, or they were dirt poor, or maybe they came from a situation where they had everything that they needed growing up and they're finding that it's a struggle to do that for their own family. Who knows? But you have to be able to listen and pull on those threads a little bit. So just asking, tell me about your process, is boring. So what you want to do instead is say, when a blank page stares back at you, what's the first move that you make? Right? Get into the head of the person that you're talking to. Ask them about things that light them up. And you'll know very quickly when you're sitting there and you're looking at them and you're talking to them what they are willing to open up about and what they're not. You get that instantly, right? We all feel it. But don't be afraid to pull on those threads a little bit. So, all right. That enters another section of interview etiquette, I guess, basically creating safety for your guest so that it doesn't feel antagonistic from the outset. You're not trying to hit them with gotcha questions. You're not trying to get to the point where it feels very confrontational. What you want to be able to do is set the tone that it is a judgment free zone, that your guest is safe to talk about whatever they want to talk about, and that if they feel uncomfortable, that you're willing to, back off when need be, right? You want to respect who your guest is. So when a guest or anybody senses judgment or fear, that amygdala starts to light up and go nuts. Their cortisol, all that stress hormone, starts to kick up, and that's why you feel things in your gut. And then that reflective part of your brain, your memories, that all shuts down because you're focused on this immediate threat. It's what our brains do. So what you have to do is set a stage where your guest feels safe. That way, the oxytocin flows instead, and they start to feel okay. And all of those storytelling pathways, all those neurons that have fired and create all this vision in your brain, all that starts to fire and those pathways open up and the storytelling gets better. People sit back, they relax a little bit more, they laugh a little bit more. They're interested in jumping in and adding more to the story. Why? Because they now feel safe that they can share these things. These are the elements of podcasting that have nothing to do with a mic or a stream deck or a monitor or a light, right? These are the things that help you have conversations that matter. So, one of the things in that creating safety, one of the things you have to do, whether it's before the interview or during the interview, right? Maybe it's during your initial communications with the guest in telling them about the show and what's going to be happening. But you have to ask permission before wandering into a lot of sensitive topics, right? And I always ask this of my guests in my questionnaire. Is there anything that you want to stay away from, right? So you may know that your guest, their business went belly up 5 years ago and it caused a lot of problems and it caused them to get a divorce and, maybe their kids left them and their dog hates them or whatever it is. They may be willing to talk about their business collapsing, but unwilling to talk anything about their family or the personal side. That's perfectly okay. All you have to do is set those guardrails at the beginning of the conversation so that you know where your lateral limits are. You have to acknowledge the vulnerability as it surfaces. You have to be able to say, all right, that's cool. Take your time. This is a big moment, right? We're sitting here waiting patiently. You don't have to worry about rushing into an answer or exposing too much. Say what you want to say. Don't say what you don't want to say. But don't be afraid to push a little bit because maybe they're willing to talk about it. Maybe they've been waiting to talk about it and they just haven't had the opportunity to do so. Then, inevitably, and again, I've done this, is that when someone's about to say something vulnerable, don't ruin it. Don't ruin it. If you notice that energy dipping, maybe it's before a pause. This is your moment to just lean in a little bit. Maybe you soften your speech. Maybe you mimic a little bit of body posture and you lean in, maybe you lean back. Give them some space. If it feels like they're shutting down, open up, back off a little bit. Some of that physical movement allows people to feel like they can breathe a little bit more. It keeps everything in that slower pace where you don't feel rushed, where you don't feel anxious, you don't feel pushed. When people do feel pushed, a lot of times what they do is they reflexively give you what they think is going to be the PR answer or the patent answer, the safe answer. And with that, you have to add in a little bit of curiosity on your side in that conversation. Because if they're just giving you something that they've, said to 1,000 other people, well, be a little bit curious, dig a little bit deeper. Maybe you say something like, "Wow, that's an angle I haven't heard before. What took you there? What led you there?" That keeps the conversation between the two of you exploratory, right? Just ask them about it. They may continue to shut you down, at which point you kind of get the signal that, hey, this isn't someplace that they want to go. But if you start saying things like, well, what led you there? What were you thinking when that happened? Or when all of that was going on, what's the first thing you thought about? Was it the situation? Was it the face of your kids? Like, what was the thing that happened? And if you're curious and you can stay in that spot, then you don't even have to look at your list of questions. You just fall into this beautiful conversation that gives your listeners a totally different side of your guest. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've heard, and this isn't a pat on my back, but it's just due to the research of saying, wow, that's a really good question. I've never been asked that before. Let me think about that for a second. And I love those moments because I know that they weren't prepared for that question and that it's lighting up different parts of their brain and that I'm about to get something really, really good. I love that. I love that moment. And it's never out of disrespect, but I love to give people the opportunity to talk about themselves in a way that they haven't done it before. Now, after you've had this amazing conversation, it's time to go into the editing room. And there are times where, in the interest of fitting a narrative, we edit things out. I'm really trying not to edit anything anymore. I used to edit out a lot of pauses and ums and ahs, and I realized that that's just part of who my guests are. Good morning, Kelly. Good morning. How are you? I'm so glad that you're here, and I cannot wait for you to be on this. We're going to set up some time, and I'm going to bring you on because there's a whole lot that I want to talk to you about. And it's perfect that you showed up because one of the things that I know that I've watched Kelly do, and if you don't know Kelly, she's phenomenal artist, just a truly phenomenal artist and an even better person. The thing that I love about watching what you've been writing, Kelly, and all the stuff that you've been going through, that's what I want to dig into because there's been a lot here that has changed. And I know that. And so these are the types of conversations that I'm interested in. So we're going to set up some time and bring you on. But I think what I was getting at is the editing side. It's really easy for us to edit out the good stuff inadvertently, right? We're trying to make things, hey, if we do it faster paced and we get people to just zip through the podcast and there's no ums or ahs or pauses or second takes or stumbles or fumbles or someone saying a word incorrectly, let's edit all that out and make it sterile and clean. Well, you're taking the actual soul out of the podcast. And let me ease back here for a second. I'm not talking about those of you that do podcasts and have a bunch of people on your editing team. And you've got color graders and editors and storytellers and graphic artists and motion like all that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people like you and me, one person, camera, microphone, light, and some interest in what we both have to say, right? So when it comes to editing, let it breathe, let it sit there. Stop editing so much. You're starting to cut out the good parts of the conversation. What I've learned through not only the 60, almost 70 episodes of Generator, but the 15 years, 20 years of interviews before that, is that cutting to try to get a good moment, cutting out the good moments, you're cutting out the stuff that makes them good. It's all the buildup, it's all the context after. This culture of quick hit content is killing connected stories, right? I was laying in bed this morning, doom scrolling, whatever time, 3, 4 in the morning. And I'm scrolling and I'm watching stuff. And it was 3, 4 seconds. Boom, gone. Boom, gone. Boom, gone. And I could feel my attention just getting distracted. And I wasn't giving any of these creators a chance. Why are we making 1 minute reels when people are watching 3 seconds? What's the point of it? What's the point of feeding this machine all this short form content? Yeah, there's a place for it, right? It's entertaining, it's dumb. But why? Why are we creating it? I'll create shorts that hopefully pique enough interest that someone will want to go watch the rest of the episode. But I'm not making short form reels. I'm not making short form content in that method. I'm not saying, all right, let's plan out a short, let's plan out a reel. I do lives and then maybe I'll pull some stuff from it that would work as short content. That's my approach to it. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel aligned. And when I feel aligned, I'm producing much more. That's all it comes down to. You do you, boo. But for me, I am not going to be making a lot of short form content. It's just not me. It's not what I want to get into. I have no interest in it. But I can get on here and talk for 45 minutes and talk all about this, that, or the other, and then cut that up. It feels easier for me. And as a one man band, it's something that I can do. All right. All that said, let me try to wrap this up. The gear, right? Like I said, I'm very well aware that I made a video about microphones yesterday. But this, what I do, what Generator's trying to be, the conversations that I want to build out in the podcast network, I want storytellers. I want people that can connect in a different way. I do not want the same conversations that we always have. I do not want the same conversations on 10 different podcasts with the same guest on every single one. We are all so multifaceted. We're all so deep. And the only way that we can really expose that is to either have these conversations in public or in private. But I love doing this with other creators because there's so much shared experience. There's so many things that we all experience, but we don't talk about. And I want to take that veil off. I want to have this real conversation. Things aren't going well, let's talk about it. If things are going great, awesome. Tell us how you did it. What's going through your mind? What's your approach? Are you drinking, smoothies in the morning? What's the thing that gets you going? What lights you up? What keeps you creating? Then also, what are the things that make you want to go hide in a closet? What are the things that make you want to put your fist through a wall? That's the good stuff because it means you're human and you're real and you're unexpected. And as long as we stay curious for that, we can get those stories out. By getting those stories out, we feel less alone. By feeling less alone, we have this community around us that supports us. By having that community around us that supports us, we produce more art. That art makes everyone feel better. It doesn't have to do with money. It doesn't have to do with fame or vanity numbers. We're producing art because that's what we do. That's what we do. So if you're thinking about getting into podcasting, let's bring this all full circle again. If you're thinking about getting into podcasting, yeah, gear's the thing that you have to think about. Is gear the only thing you have to think about? No. I know people that are killing it with an iPhone and a little DJI mic. I know people that are killing it in a $200,000 like production studio. Doesn't matter. Learn how to talk. Learn how to have a conversation. Learn how to be curious. Right? Everybody watches Ted Lasso. Be curious like Ted Lasso. All right. That's me pontificating. I just wanted to have a little bit of a morning hangout. I am so glad that a bunch of you came and hung out. And what I'll probably try to do is just to put my money where my mouth is, see if I can get some shorts out of this and put it up online. Who knows? But I love talking the craft of podcasting. I love talking the craft of interviewing and how to get more from people. It's really not that difficult, but there's a lot of techniques that you can use to make that process better. I've written them all down in a book. I'm not going to pitch it to you right now, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say something about it. Speak Less, Get More. That's the name of it. It's going to be coming out in the beginning of 2026. I'm excited about it. I'm excited for people to at least read it and understand that there's more that goes into this than just setting up a light and a camera. So, with that, I'm just going to say thank you. I hope you all have an amazing week. Thinking about stuff that's coming up ahead, looking at next week with it being Christmas. I'll probably try to do something. Maybe I'll do something on Christmas Eve. Maybe I'll do a Christmas Eve live and hang out with all you misfits that are either alone or maybe separated from your families or whatnot. Maybe we can all hang out and just have some virtual eggnog. But I'll try to do something next week. I'll try to do something on the 26th. And then we're back on schedule. Looking at New Year's Eve, I know that New Year's Eve is a little bit more difficult to get people to hang around. So I'm going to switch it up that week. And Ben Markham is going to come on the 30th. We're going to do a special session on Tuesday instead of Wednesday. We're going to disrupt the schedule a little bit. I'll let you all know. Ben Markham's going to come on. We're going to have some martinis and talk about things that happened this year and just kind of get into the whole new show format. So I'll be posting all about that. But if you have any questions at all, just hit me up in the chat. Hit me up in the comments on YouTube, here on Facebook. Send me a message anywhere, and I'm happy to talk podcasting. This is really becoming the thing that brings me a lot of joy. So between the photography and this, I'm feeling pretty happy these days. So, all right. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. Go enjoy your weekend. Stay safe, stay warm, and keep making art because that's what we do. All right. Take care.